That's it.
Coming up, obviously, there was a lot of producers that I was feeling, being a fanatical hip-hop collector and programmer. I mean, one of the first programmers I was always aware of was the legendary Master Paul C. For me, from way back in the days, I had demos where Pogo was cutting back breaks like Substitution. I loved that break. That was always been one of my favourite breaks. The ruckusness of it, the compression on that beat. And to hear ego tripping, at first it sounded like a loop to me. It did honestly sound like a loop, and at that point I wasn't too sure. I mean, I was using things like bell delay units to fire off loops and things like that to get that sort of quality and clarity. But that Paul C boy, when I listened to the drum rolls on that song, his signature drum roll, I knew that was programmed. And that opened my eyes to chopping, the possibilities to chopping and arranging. Other producers at that time were Marley Marl. Marley Marl was mad funky, and I suppose he had the musician's ear as well, which gave him a little bit of an advantage. He used a lot of great classic beats, and you know, Marley's one of the pioneers of putting the 808 behind the break beat, you know, making sure that shit was pumping, keeping the stuff up quite high tempo. But you know, he dealt in copying and templating breaks quite well, but always substituted the hi-hats with, you know, more clearer drum machine hi-hats and things like that. Paul C had a way of just using every grain in the break.
Got my junior high school yearbook, which I had to dig up, but I still held on to it. Now this is 231 Annex. It says right there the year that we graduated. And let me find Paul in here. Oh, there we go. Look at that. I opened it up right to him. Wow. Hopefully you got good lighting in it?
Yeah.
I don't know if you could read it, but I wrote down there, Paul Mckasty, greatest guitarist in the world. Because like I said, that's what I knew him as, a guitarist and artist back then. So that's my memories of Paul. I grew up in the Bronx, but moved to Rosedale, and that's where I met Paul C. at junior high school, 231 Annex. And I knew him before he became a hip-hop producer. I knew him as this cool, humble kid. I'll tell you something about the Bronx is mixed, all racial cultures. When I moved into Rosedale, it was predominantly white, segregated. In fact, that high school, that junior high, 231, was the annex, and that's where all the white kids went. And then, of course, 231 was the high school where everybody else went, in Springfield. And a lot of kids, you know, they were prejudiced, being that we were Hispanic, moving to the area. But I remember being in a schoolyard in junior high school playing ball by myself, and Paul walked over and he's like, "Can I shoot some hoops with you?" And I was like, "Yeah, cool." And he was like the only kid there that just real humble, laid back, not a prejudice bone in his body. He just came up to me and befriended me, and that's something I always remember about Paul. Also, I don't know a lot of people know, but he was a good artist too. He used to draw, and I used to also draw, so we used to compare our artwork. And he was pretty good at that too. And later on, I found out he played bass guitar. So my oldest brother Billy and a few of his friends, they would get together and jam out with him. And one time we were in his basement, he was jamming out with his brother Timmy on keys, and just hanging out. And I remember first time I got introduced to Sly and the Family Stone, which I didn't know until Paul said, "Yo, you gotta check these cats out." And you know, he was just like that, man. He just loved music. You know, he was into rock, funk, and all that. Cool cat. And then later on, I went my way, went into the Navy, and then I was getting into DJing and production and all that. And at the same time, I didn't know Paul was also doing the same thing. But of course, he took it to another level, and he blew up.
It was the summer of 1980, and I was forming a band at the time. I was trying to get some musicians involved, and Paul was not one of them. I was 21, I guess, and Paul was 16. I thought a little too young, and was working with his brother Tim Mckasty. And at a later date, when we were rehearsing and the bassist didn't show up, Paul became a member of the band. He was interesting in that he brought a different set of influences to the group. I was like into progressive rock of Frank Zappa and Todd Rundgren. He was more of a soul guy who knew a lot about 60s soul, and so those influences kind of merged and it worked. But he was also a big Jaco Pastorius fan, and he learned Jaco's riffs, and a lot of musicians were impressed by what Paul could do in the bass, and I think he was playing at Precision at the time, Fender Precision. The band was formed as a trio, and it was 1980-81, so I think the band I was most influenced in emulating was The Police, which was a trio, and we kind of wanted that thick, trio sound of three guys on stage and playing loudly. And, Paul, I don't think that was Paul's cup of tea. If anything, he was more of a Clash guy. But, we combined elements again and made interesting sound, I think. Our first show was one of the last shows at Max's Kansas City. It was a famous rock club. We did that, I think, in August '81, and I think we were pretty. The band was okay. Paul was the best performer early on, and I was pretty weak, and the drummer was okay. And as the band went on, I kind of improved, and it kind of came together. So the last shows were pretty good shows, and I think we did quite well. We had a nice little audience, and some fans. It was pretty cool. The group ended. It just kind of frittered away. We'd played. Our last show was, I think, '84. We had a different drummer. We had a really interesting funk drummer with us, and a guitarist named Freddie Tane, and we really had a great last few shows. And it's almost like the band had matured by then, and I think what happened was we just kind of drifted into different things. I was getting involved with film, and Paul was just starting to get involved with production. We'd finished an album, the Mandolin Lee Roadshow, which didn't explode, out of the gate, and so it was kind of okay. If you make the album and you don't sell, 100,000 units, why bother continuing? And I think that kind of took the air out of us. But it was a good run, and we played some really good last shows, late '84, and then we just kind of went into different things. But I remained friends. Paul started production when we were doing the album, the Mandolin Lee Roadshow. We recorded in a place called High Five Studio, and he worked with Moogie Klingman on production. He would go there and do some engineering work, and he really took to it. And we were able at a couple of occasions fool around in the studio ourselves with the board and the outboard gear, and I enjoyed it, and would have liked to continue. But Paul, he didn't just like it. He went back the next day and continued and worked hard until he got the hang of it. Then he went to the Jamaica Music Building where all the stuff was the creative stuff was happening in Queens on the hip hop scene, and that's where he really took off.
The entrance right there. Damn. Guaranteed title and mortgage number. I was not there. Not there. Shit. The whole building basically looks the same. Yeah, man. So many people grace his door. We were in 2007. Last time I stood here was 1994. 1994, that's 6, That's 13 years ago.
For about 9 blocks, and a little further up to the right, about 2 lights, is the corner. I mean, it's the building where me and Soup recorded all our hits. We laid it down. This is where Paul C did all his magic. We're not just us, but we're like Large Professor, Biz Markie, Rakim, countless dudes, magnetic MCs. Can't even get that out. And yeah, man, this is a very prestigious area for hip hop, so let's hold tight for a second. Well, this is the famous building where we recorded all our stuff at. That's how you would get in and through that door. And I'm gonna show you this fire escape we used to hang out between sessions and smoke a little weed, drink some beer, sometimes just kick it, have some ideas, throw in the air. And I'm gonna show you that right now. It's the fire escape to hang out at. Get a good view. I think it was the 3rd floor, I think. I'm not exactly, hold on, 1, 2, 3. Might have been the 4th floor. Looks like it was the 4th floor. Yeah, I'm gonna hang out right over here in this area right there, man. That's the window, one of the windows to the back of the studio. The office was the adjacent window right there. And so all that hip hop came out of this building right here. The music building. Buffalo Studios, that's the window right here, baby. Right there, that's the fire escape used to hang out, man. Right over here, see that window right there? There used to be a rehearsal room for rock bands, and Metallica used to do music right in that window right there, right in that building right there. I mean, right next to the studio.
This building alone, the history, the stuff that we did is just, it's unexplainable. It's unexplainable. Nobody could ever say that, you know, hip hop didn't transcend right over here. It transcended over here. It started in the Bronx, yes it did, but it was taken to another level right here. Everything came that was prevalent from Queens, New York, that was prevalent from Brooklyn later on, that was prevalent uptown parts of Manhattan, the Bronx, they came here because of the fact that they knew there was a sound coming out of here. Power Play had their studio, INS had their studio, Unique had their studio, Quad had their studio. It was all cool, but they weren't basement sounds. It wasn't the gut, it wasn't the balls of hip hop. Balls came from here. Steezo hit, Eric Sermon hit, Mark the 45 King, he hit. Did club stuff, Casey Flight, did oh my god, Super Lover C, Casanova Rudd, Mikey D, Showstoppers with Salt and Pepper, their first record. Oh my goodness, it's incredible. I'm drawing a blank, but it was just so much. So much, man, so much.
I remember his first hip hop recording, which is called "I'm Coming in the House." I forgot who did it, and he was kind of shy about playing it, and this was recorded in his basement when he first started, and I thought it was really funny, and I think he got a kick out of, you know, people like me, you know, people like something that you do. It's an affirmation that what you're doing is not in vain, and it's the reward. You know, the money, you know, comes, but the reward is that, yeah, I did it right.
Check this out. Now, a lot of people, you know what I mean, thought that I came out with Main Source first, you know what I mean? That was my first claim to fame or whatever. And as y'all know already, man, I was Mikey D in the LA Posse way before Main Source. So, tonight, I want to dedicate this performance, my first time ever in the UK. I want to dedicate this C, you know what I mean? So, we're gonna start it off a little something like this. Quite flirty. It's about time for me to run down the dirty. And if you ask me if I have a dream, what's my answer? Yes, indeed. First time I met Paul C, we was in Queens. I was with my older brother Eddie OJ. They had a group called the Clientele Brothers. So we was walking around the neighborhood, you know what I mean, sipping on 40s or whatever. My man Will Seville was like, let's go to Paul's house. I never met Paul. I heard about him. You know what I mean? They never told me that he was a white guy. They never told me that he produced. They used to just talk about Paul C. So we walked the back streets of Lowellton into Rosedale, which is like the connecting neighborhood, about a mile walk, you know? And we got to this garage where we heard the music coming from, you know, out of the garage. When we went in the garage, it was Paul C on his drum machines just doing his thing. I couldn't believe it. But that was the first time I met him. You know, he wanted me to freestyle. I freestyled for him. And then we just hit it off, you know? Well, what it was, we started recording in his garage, you know, and stuff was sounding pretty good. And then he got an opportunity to work in 1212 Studios, which was in the music building in Queens, you know? And, you know, in that music building, 1212 was the first hip-hop studio in there. And Paul C was the engineer. So, you know, like late night hours, when nobody was booking the you know, scheduled time or whatever, he would call Johnny Quest and me to come down, and on the sneak tip we'd be recording records, you know. But it was a real good look. We used to spend long hours, man, from like 12 o'clock midnight to 11 o'clock in the morning the next day, just recording, you know.
It's in your car.
It's a real dude. He was into his music. He knew what he was talking about. He knew. It was the first, I'm about to say like to token it like that way, but that was the first white boy I knew who knew his shit. Like he knew all the chops, he knew the arrangements, he knew how to rock the SB 1200, he knew how to do everything. He knew it to the T, whereas he could show me something that I didn't know. You understand? Whereas the things that he wanted to know what I was doing, I could give him, but he could show me something new that I could add to my repertoire, my trade, for my traits. That's how me and Paul got together. Said and Paul got along very well.
Paul was a hungry engineer. He wanted to do more than engineering. So he had a nice record collection.
Yeah, big, large record collection with all types of break beats, all types of good sounds, everything.
And what Paul was, he was a technical aspect that a lot of the rap cats didn't really get into. So being that he was an engineer, then he knew the technical side. He knew that certain records, if you panned them, you could free up the drums and shit like that. Those are the type of things he taught. Like, then you know if you go to the left side on this, the drums are there by themselves. You know, that was Paul.
Yeah. Paul C, phenomenal man. You know, when I met Paul C was just like, looked like a little punk rocker kid. You know, he basically didn't strike me as an individual that he became to be. And I met him when he did my first session. And the first session was, you know, me with coming in there with a group called Chosen Few. And Paul C did his thing. You know, didn't know much, but he did his thing, took a liking to me, and our relationship really kicked off from there. As I started to work in the 1212, Paul C, his talent was way beyond, because he was a white guy in hip-hop. And I said, this guy can't be as tight as he can be, because the whole rumor was white guys ain't got no rhythm. It wasn't the truth at all. Found that out. It's like, oh shit. He's tapping the beats on SB12, tapping the shit out of him. Not just tapping him. And he would get up there. He was decent as a bass player, so he would play his little bass lines over top of stuff. And we would get together and form these little compositions, and they would turn into classics. Paul would do things EQ-wise that most people wouldn't do. You know, he would widen a kick. He was the first one to teach me how to use a compressor properly. When he would take the kick drum, he would squash it. He would take the threshold, not the ratio, move the ratio to like 6.1, and which would get more of the sound. Then he would take the attack and move the attack up millisecond-wise. Move the attack up millisecond-wise. What that would do would let the attack of the kick hit. But by the time the ratio would touch the kick, what happens is it would now squash it. So it would go, but you would hear it, so it would stretch it. Now the threshold would actually hold that kick together and keep it one moderate level. And then you would have the decay. The decay would lengthen it out. So that'll just show you what happens with an 808 kick drum.
Oh, 12-12 sound, the town, well, I call it the Paul C sound, not 12-12 sound. The Paul C sound was something that was, I mean, hip-hop to the sense that it had the drums as hard as rock would give them, with a griminess, with the finesse of, I would say, of a funk record. And the way he used to more or less truncate his kicks and snares with the decay of you know, it involved the whole swing of hip hop. Honestly, it was the swing that hip hop has to the essence to make it sound as live as it could be. I think Paul C was very vital with that. You know, along with Ultra and these guys, they had the evolvement of hip hop to that sense.
So when we took that 808 kick drum and ran it through them DBX 160s, you couldn't stand in front of that speaker. Monstrous. Them guys in Miami used to do the bass records and everything. Couldn't handle the shit we was doing. Couldn't hold on to it. And we were making regular kick drums, funky drum and kick drums, sound like it was at 808. And we would attach tones to it, do all kinds of stuff. We had so many tricks. It was incredible. Paul was a phenomenal dude, man. Way underrated. Never really fully discovered, you know, because he was cut down in his prime. But on the same token, he brought so many mysteries to hip hop.
I don't really know too much about Paul C outside of that. Whatever he touched was fucking bananas. You know, the way anything that Large Professor did that Paul C engineered, you know, that has like a sound that cannot be replicated even to this day. I don't know what he did in terms of getting the mix with the depth of the bass lines and the depth of the drum sounds, but it just sounds deep. You know, you listen to like Rakim's third album or Coogee Rap's second album, Wanted Dead Alive. You listen to like all the early Main Source stuff. You listen to Super Lover C, Casanova Rudd, anything that Paul C did on that. I mean, anything, you know, you listen to any Ultra stuff that Paul C did. I mean, the way it was engineered, it was just bananas. You know, you throw it on in the sound system right now, and it will destroy 80% of records that are engineered right now.
Paul was extremely passionate about his work. Money obviously was secondary. He didn't get involved with music to make a fortune. He got involved with it because he was committed to a sound, and he worked hard to achieve the sound he heard in his head, and he felt, and he thought about it, and he was a perfectionist in that he would, you know, constantly refine his beats. He would refine them until he felt satisfied. And that's the point he would say, "What do you think?" And then he'd say, "Okay, yeah, it's working." Or, you know, I remember he would he would get a these are the days of you know, the first emulators, so it was exciting to get organic sounds on synthesized equipment or digital equipment, and I think we both appreciated, you know, organic sound. So it was great when you could get like a natural cowbell, for instance, or authentic sounding conga, you know, without hiring a player to do it, but getting it digitally. There was an excitement to it, and he was always committed to making something sound authentic and organic as opposed to canned.
We did it for the love, which popularity happened to come with it, hand in glove. We didn't ask for it, it just came. you know, and it came to a point where Paul's face started getting seen very little, but they started saying, that's that dude from 1212. I remember I got him in black quarters. Never been in line quarters. I said, I'm gonna get your ass out tonight. I ain't going to line quarters. They gonna beat me up. I said, let's go. I'm with you. Got on the line quarters, had a ball. Had a ball. He said, this is it. This is it. Next job that came on his table was Biz Markie. Started working with Biz and Spring Again and a bunch of other stuff. Died right after that.
Paul C was the biggest influence in my life musically. I mean, he was like, I used to call him a black guy trapped in a white body. and it's ironic, he's Polish. And I'm half Polish. That's where the name Rud comes from. It comes from Rudnicki. My father's Polish, my mother's black. And we always had that connection, as well as being great friends and as well as having the same type of mind musically. And Paul used to have he had one of the largest record collections to this day that I can remember. He had this closet built, a walk-in closet in his basement in a house. And it was like over, I mean, it was wall-to-wall records stacked 5 records high, rolls across. I mean, it was thousands of records, man. Stuff that to this day I couldn't find. I was never into collecting records, but I used to always like to hear them. I could play a record one time and never forget the sound, but I could forget the name and who the artist was, but I could never forget that sound. And Paul C was a very special person, man. Very likable, works with you, respectful, smoke a little weed with you. I miss him, man. And it hurt me more when they tried to say that we were the cause of him getting murdered or that we murdered him ourselves. And I mean, please, come on, me murder Paul C is impossible. I used to love the brother, man. We had our own production company we were about to start with each other called CPR. C stands for Clemente, which is Super Lover C. The P stands for Paul, which is Paul C, and the R was Rud. And we already had the logo in the works. We had hired a guy to do a logo, and it was the what is that called? When someone his heart's being monitored, and you see the bleep going across. Bloop, 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 bloop. CPR. That was the logo. That little bleep.
I can remember us going up on the roof for 1212, like when we were supposed to be in a session, doing what we supposed to do. Paul C, Johnny Quest, and myself, we would go up on the roof of the studio and just drink a whole bunch of beers, you know, and stuff like that, and then sneak back down into the studio and really get it in.
Yeah, oh man, Paul C, 1988. I mean, probably like January, February 1988. We just have finished, what volume was it? Wow. Maybe volume 23 of the Breakbeats. And, you know, we just happened to go to 1212 Studios without even knowing, you know, what was behind it. So I'm walking in, Ultra's walking out. I'm like, what are you doing here? So yeah, we're going to go work upstairs with Paul C. He goes, yeah, we just came from there. So when I went there, I know Paul C, you know, we introduced each other to, you know, what's going on. And he goes, you know, my name? And he said, yeah, why your name sounds familiar? I said, yeah, I do the Breakbeats. He goes, get out of here, man. So he said, he said, most definitely, man, I use all your stuff, man. You know, and he was that kind of dude. Yeah, when I said who I was, because he said the name sounded familiar, that I did the Breakbeat albums, he was like, oh, man, most definitely, man. You were one of the guys that I always was curious about knowing who you were. And, not the ring, I don't want to. So, you know, he always gave me mad props. And then, you know, we just started, you know, getting, I mean, for the short time that I knew him, we developed a good rapport. I mean, we first started noticing that we used the same machine as 1200, so we used to have little battles on who can program better on the 1200. And then, you know, we were contemplating on making an album together with my partner at the time, with Cheb Nunez. We were most definitely trying to vibe and trying to do that. And then months later, the sad story came to us of what had happened. And I mean, right now, if I could say if Paul C would have still been with us, the game would have been totally different. The sound of hip hop would have been. I mean, he was that dude. Quiet was kept. Paul C was I guess the next evolvement of hip hop at the time that he was here. He was the guy that created a new. He was the guy that was most definitely, changing the sound of hip hop in the way, with his music. So Paul C most definitely missed, my brother.
Oh man, I didn't know Paul C personally. I met him a few times with a group called STP, Simply Too Positive, which later on went to be known as Organized Confusion, which consisted of Prince Poetry and Pharaoh March. And I remember seeing a young dude with glasses in there that was a protege of Paul C, and his name was Large Professor. I remember seeing Super Lover, seeing him come through there. I remember seeing Eric B, Rakim come through there. I remember seeing Ultramagnetic come through there. Mikey D, you know what I'm saying? Like, this is way before I did Fudge Pudge with Pharaoh and Prince, and I was just like bugging out because what you hear these days of the Nas's, the Q-Tip records, the Tribe Called Quest records and stuff like that came from this kid with glasses. And in turn, this white guy, it looks like a rock dude, you know what I'm saying, that taught Large Professor how to use the SB12, not the 1200, SB12. Like, he taught Large how to manipulate this machine, and you know what I'm saying, me being younger, in hip hop and stuff like that, you look at it as a black thing, but it wasn't. See what he did, you know what I'm saying, for the couple of times that I seen him, and it was amazing. That's part of my history, you know what I'm saying. So that's my memories of Paul C.
Man, when I first met Paul C, it was like later, the first or second time we had been in the 1212 studio in Queens, and we were working on some demos. We were working on some music with like the original independent label we were signed to at the time, and he just stepped in the room to get some equipment, tape or something, and he stopped off for a second and heard the beat, and he stepped out, and we were all like, oh shit, that was Paul C, and we didn't think he even noticed, but in that little bit of time frame, he got a glimpse of what Organized Confusion was all about. STP at the time, Simply Too Positive. And he took a liking to what we were doing and our rhyme schemes and everything, and he reached out to us, and that was big, big for that time for us, because we were doing it all ourselves. Like I tell people all the time, mates never really approach artists like people do today, and let me bust a shit. We just got in the basement and got on our grind, and he realized that we were hard at our craft, and wanted to get us out and produce some music for us.
I had the earliest memory of a white guy teaching Large Professor how to use the SB12, you know what I'm saying? And now that I think about it and digest everything now, that dude was a genius. You know what I'm saying? Like, if you listen to them Ultramag, early records, early Eric B and Rakim, programming and engineering, this was all Paul C and Large Professor. So, I was privileged to be around him and see what he did, you know what I'm saying?
He had a setup in his basement where all the records were, and You know, we would go through his collection and he would play us music, play us songs, and we would just chill out there. Just vibe, really, not do shit. That's what making music is about. You know, it's about the entire process during the day, the relaxing and the get to work part. So yeah, his setup was dope. Like I said, he lived in Queens, which was dope. We didn't have to travel to the outskirts of everywhere to get the fly beats or whatever.
Yeah, we continued our friendship, but we also continued working together. We did a few recordings when he was working at the music building in Jamaica. I think I still have some of that stuff. And it was always interesting because he always had something exciting he'd done during the day, and he would play for me and ask me what I thought of it. It was always cool, and he had he just had a real knack for what he felt. He didn't think about things commercially. He thought about what he could groove to, and his his sense was impeccably right. He knew what worked and what would be commercially viable. I think when we worked together, he was even influenced with me. He'd give me corrections, which was unusual. Usually, when we were working early on, I'd say, no, Paul, we'll do it my way because mine's the right way. And then I think later on, we became more equal. We've written some songs together too, and so it was an interesting relationship, which was fruitful.
He was the first real person in the music industry who shut us both down in terms of we were really heralded coming up as lyricists in the area, and we had a little buzz in the industry. Our mixtape was circulating around, and I was sort of feeling myself at the time with all these elaborate 42-bar rhyme schemes, and we would come to the studio to lay songs, and Paul was the first one to be like, yo, what the fuck are you doing? Like, you gotta cut this verse down and gotta pay attention to arrangement. And he forced our demo into that, and having the proper song arrangement, not to say that we didn't know, but he made us pay very close attention to that. And I think he allowed us the freedom to experiment, us being Organized Confusion, but put into a song structure. And I think when Paul passed away, it makes me think about where we would have been if he spearheaded those projects, because it would have been organized. It would have been confusion, but it would have been a little bit more organized than it was, because we really went off on a tangent and broke a lot of rules. Some of them out of anger, some of them because the rules were there and we just felt like breaking them. But I guess that's what made Organized Confusion as well. But I just wonder what our careers would have been like if Paul C was executive producer and produced those records.
I'm Jim DeSantis. I'm Paul C's cousin.
Yeah.
And Paul and I go from little kids together. He was a year and a few months older than me, and we spent a lot of time together, Little League and family reunions and family barbecues and just sleepovers and things like that. We had a good time, Paul and I. Actually, his oldest brother Johnny, who we all looked up to, he was a big time baseball fan, but big time into James Brown and all the old Motown type of stuff, and I never saw a record collection this big. In fact, Mikey D had a shot in one of his videos with all those records, and I just assumed that those were Paul's records in the collection.
I don't know if Paul bought a lot of music, but because his brother John was a real music aficionado and had an incredible record collection, and that included 60s, 70s, 80s. So, you could just, raid John's record collection if we ever needed a, Wilson Pickett influence or a Beatles thing. We just would, go that way rather than let's see what's happening new. But Paul influence had a great influence in the music that I was writing, because, my style was just much more weird and eclectic, and he was grounded in again, funk and soul, and he would take these disparate influences and combined them, and it was a good mix, I thought, and it worked for us. I think we played together for 4 years.
They cleaned this whole area up a lot, man. There's be a lot of transactions going on right here called The Hill, right here. This is Jacob A. Reese Center right there. A lot of basketball players coming out of here. Ron Artest, a couple other dudes doing their thing. And I'm gonna show you where they used to do their jams in the park. Where all that, when MC Shan was performing with all them dudes. I'm gonna show you that right now. There's some little 5-0 action going for you right now. Might stop you for filming. Right now I'm listening to Chubb Rock on what is that, Hot 97 right now? It's Old School Fridays right now. They always have some kind of special guest on Friday. This is the park where they used to jam at, right in this little area right over here. Where all the jams is at in the park. Hip hop out in the park. This is the park right here that we used to and we shot our video at, right in that park right there. That was the first scene. We came out of the building. My building's, I'm panning right, my building's right here. That's my building. Hold on, let me go back over here for a second. Yep, this is the park. A lot of stuff changed over here, new tables and, whatever stuff new, I guess is new. We was dancing on those tables right there. Came out of the building. We zoomed in and we said, "How you doing?" Then the girls that got them locks on came on. This is my building. It all started, all that hip hop started for me and Soup in this building right here. 1-20 Astoria Boulevard. Yes, sir. I'm not gonna go too far. But over here on the right side of the building, that floor right here, second floor, that's my old apartment. That's where all the hits was made at. Soup was on the first floor, right there, and around the corner of that window right there. Of that floor right there. So a lot of hip hop came out of this building right here, my dudes. I decided to do hip hop and take it seriously, making tracks when I saw Paul behind the boards, working the boards, the mixing board, and I was seeing all those knobs and hearing this raw sound being all put together, all these tracks put together to make a collective sound together. I was so amazed by it. It's like, you can make stuff sound like that just from the rawness that it came from to the finished product now. Just what that whole makeup was about. I was hooked from that day. I was hooked. I was at 1212 Studios in Macon, New York. I might get you a scene of that. 1212 Studios. There's a big music building and all types of characters was in there. I remember one day, me and Paul C, we were and Super Lover C, we were working on some cuts off our album, Girls I Got 'Em Locked. I'm not exactly sure which track it was, but I know we were about to lay some vocals. And next door there was rehearsal space. There was rock bands all on the floor that we had the studio at. And the music was, the rehearsal music was bleeding into the sound booth where we were recording vocals. So, after, we'll hear it stop, subside for a minute, then we'll start recording. And then the stuff will bang right back up, and then we're like, damn, we can't record like this, So we decided to go next door. That was the loudest stuff, was right, immediately next to us. And we banged on the door because they couldn't hear us because, they doing music in there. But someone did finally come to the door. And this was the first time I ever seen mad in any capacity. And he looked really irate. He was like, "Yo, man, can you turn shit down for a minute? For a few, because we're trying to record some vocals." And the guys looked at us like we were crazy. But, I guess, it's a mutual respect for artists and, musicians alike. So they said, "Yeah, no problem, man. We was about to take a break anyway. How long you need?" We said about 40 minutes to an hour. And Paul said, "Thanks a lot." And I said, "Thanks a lot as well." And, main thing about the story, the band that we told to turn their shit down was Metallica. So that was before they blew up.
I had a record, Casanova Love, Super Lover C, and it was due to James. And I always check out the labels because I want to know who's behind the scenes, who's producing it. And I see Paul C. Mckasty. I was like, get out of here, man. Paul is producing hip hop now. I knew this kid was gonna do something, man, because he's just so creative, so artistic, and it was just good to see that he was doing that there. And just listening to his production, man, that raw, big sound, you know, like even to today, I don't think anybody could take a beat like James Brown beat or the Honey Drippers Impeach the President and put it on steroids, you know. It's just a big sound and grungy, you know, and even I tried to mess with it and try to flip it like that. I don't know. He had the skill, man, you know, the technique of whatever, the ear. Nobody can do what Paul C did, man. And much respect to him, man.
Paul was into everything, man. Paul played the bass. Paul was he was brilliant. He could do anything. You know, you put him on the drum set, he could play the drum set. You put him on the bass guitar, he could play any kind of riff you wanted him to play. And unfortunately, I was away when he was really doing this thing with the hip hop. But I love hip hop, and I know that Paul was big in hip hop.
You can tell I've been down for years, ain't facts since 19 shit, way back. I've been on linoleum and the train track. You gotta have skills or else you ain't jack in the eyes of the hip hop community. That's how it was and that's how it's soon to be. Once again, you can't buy it, it comes from within, and it doesn't play it out cause it wasn't a trend to begin with. PH your motherfucking dimwit. Last Night Changed Your Mind by Eddie Kendrick.
I'm gonna keep this real short. I remember doing my demo with Chung King on Center Street. You know, Nas had released It Ain't Hard to Tell already. No, Halftime, my bad. Cause the album wasn't out yet. Illmatic wasn't out. But make a long story short, I remember Serge taking me to the studio, and I seen Large in the other room banging out It Ain't Hard to Tell. Now I've seen him rock on the SB12 in the 1200, you know what I'm saying? But to see him manipulate the buttons and the time stretch and all that shit, it's amazing. He does it like it's a piano, an actual piano or a keyboard, and he's time stretching, he's getting the bass line, he's chopping it, and I seen him do It Ain't Hard to Tell over maybe like 6-7 times. And I'm reaching to say 10, but I seen him do that record and change that record like 10 times in Chung King Studios on Center Street. That's one memory of Large Professor. Word.
You know, just watching Large Professor do his thing and just seeing how passionate and how intent he was when it came to creating a beat, as well as some of the jam sessions. Large plays drums, Paul C played drums, Paul C played a little bass. We would just do live jam sessions and just, like I said, it wasn't all about, you know, making records. We were really into music. You know, Paul would get on the drums, and Large would get on the drums, and Paul would be bass or whatever, and we would just be spitting, you know, freestyles and writtens and whatever we do, and just have those recordings and just sit back and play them back and like just vibe, you know, sessions with Joe Fado and Akinelli and just people up there vibing in the studio 1212.
So Large Professor, he was Paul's protege, as they say?
I would say that just as far as the 1200 sampler is concerned, they were both really exploring that shit to no end.
I know that Paul was just beginning. I know that he was cutting edge as far as hip hop goes and engineering hip hop, and I know that still today, that many people use some of the things that Paul did way back when in the late 80s and early, late 80s. And I know that he would have been one of the main guys today had he still been here. And people would have looked to him for different techniques on engineering music and producing music and stuff like that.
I met Paul C, man, back in the late 80s, man. And just remember going to his house and walking in, not really knowing what to expect, because they was like, yo, somebody, we got this dope cat that wanna play you some beats. So I walked in the house, and first thing I seen was a whole wall full of records, fresh records, still in the plastic. You know what I mean? And that right there let me know that he was on his job, he was on his homework, and he, knew what he was doing. And then when he started playing me beats, it was crazy, man. You know what I mean? I sat there, man, I looked at this cat, man, and was just, just like learning him. And when he was telling me, his process and how he go about what he do his thing, I mean, I was blown away. He started working, he started giving me beats, you know what I mean? Ghetto, Run for Cover, Untouchable. I mean, like joint, and a bunch of joints she gave me I never got a chance to use, due to respect. But the chemistry and the relationship was just getting crazy, man. And he sensed that we was, getting something special. And he was like, yo, Rob, man, look, 'cause, he was doing beats for a lot of people at that point, Super Level C and, a bunch of cats. And at that point, once he seen that I was serious and how I was, feeling his beats, he was like, yo, Rob, man, if you want, man, I'll do beats exclusively for you, man. And when he said that, I knew that, this cat was definitely focused, and he had a mission as well, man. So, long story short, man, we started, doing songs and things of that nature, man. And shortly after that, man, couldn't have been no more than a month, maybe 2 months. I doubt it was that long, man, but he got killed, you know what I mean? And it put things in perspective, because I was looking forward, to, making history with this cat. His production is crazy. And I'm sure through this piece that you're showing right here, you're gonna play various songs of Paul C. And I'm sure if you ain't heard most of them by now, the kid was crazy. I can only imagine where he would have been at this point of his life, you know what I mean?
He made big contributions to hip hop. I mean, everybody knows the records that he had with Super and Rub, Duda James, and all that stuff he did with them through DNA. He let the Rhythm hit him out with Eric B. and Rakim. He got his hands on those records, the Ghetto record. That's his hands, you understand? So there's a lot of works that's out here, Organized Confusion, you understand, like Pharoah Monch and Prince Poe. So his work is out here. People just have to do the research and find it. That's what it is. Gotta do the research and find it.
I think we came like during or shortly after that. He was playing us, some music. He was very excited because Ra is and was and still is that dude. So we were all listening intently to what it was sounding like and how it was shaped. And he was very excited about that,
So, big up to Paul C. You still with me, bro. You know what I mean? Every time I hear the songs, I think about you, man. You know what I mean? Every time I see a fresh record still in the plastic, because I try to keep mine fresh. But before that, I had records, but you know what I mean? When I seen his record collection, now I try to keep mine a little, more manageable, man. So every time I see a fresh record in plastic, Paul C, I think of you, man. You know what I mean? It's a shame that you're not here to finish your legacy, bro. But for what you did and the brothers that you touched, like myself, we gonna make sure that we complete it for you, man. Paul C, one love. Nah, the fact, you know, just the fact, you know what I mean? Like when you sitting down and you playing records and you play a groove that's just like crazy. I used to look at him like, what you gonna do with that, man? Like, yo, you know, I just bought it a couple weeks ago. I know, you know, I'm like, yo, gee, that's bananas, man. So just, you know, sitting with him and learning what kind of music he liked and really, you know, learning how ill he was and how focused he was, man, was like the times we had. Cause, you know, it wasn't like I got a chance to know him. It was all music. It was like, you know, we sit down, we vibe, and we was just amazed, you know, like, cause he was, you know, bugging off of my history as far as how much I knew about records as well, you know what I mean? But, you know, just sitting back, you know, he might play a song and, you know, you be like, oh, and we in there like, yo, I got it. It's just crazy, man, and you know, I learned a lot from him. You know, he kind of taught me how to use the SB12. He taught Large Professor. You know, he taught a lot of cats, and you know, that's how I met Large Professor. Big up.
My first experience with 1212 Studios, I guess I was maybe 16, if that old, and it's a dude, his name is MC Out Loud, or the world knows him as Blase Blase. He's the first guy from my neighborhood that I know who had like a real professional studio, like demo that was in the studio, and this 1212 Studio was the studio that he used, and Paul C was the engineer. It was on Parsons Boulevard. We used to take the J train over there, and I mean, we used to just hang out when he had sessions, and what I remember about Paul is that he was really cool, you know what I mean, but he was an unassuming type person. Like, when you saw him, you wouldn't think that he was a great producer that he was, you know what I mean, that he was responsible for a lot of things that you thought other people were responsible for. And yeah, and it didn't last too long because, you know, unfortunately, he passed away. You know, or, you know, got murdered, or, because I don't want to say passed away, it's just like, you just pass away, you know. But, yeah, it was a great experience. I mean, he knew what he was doing, for sure. Like, it piqued my interest in the whole studio. Like, that was my first taste of ever being in a studio. So it had me, I dreamt about it. You know, being there and being behind that big board and seeing all of those buttons and him just boom, 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 doing what he did. And it looked so easy and it looked really complicated to me, you know.
First time I met Paul C, I was like 15, 16 years old. I was invited to the studio to do some scratches on the song for this female group called 2 Shades of Brown. They was from my neighborhood in Queens. And man, that was like the first time, that was my first time ever being in the studio. That was my first exposure to like music production. But when I got to the studio, you know, Paul was up in there. You know, he had a little box off to the side and he hit the button and beats jumped out of it, you know what I'm saying? And I was totally blown away. It was the SB12 that he was rocking at that time. And ever since then, that was it, man. I pretty much had the bug, you know. Paul was pretty much a mentor for me, you know. And he went on to mix some records for me and FaZe, some joints that we dropped in '88, you know. And later on, you know, CJ Moore, he mixed the joints that we did on Tommy Boy in 1990. And CJ Moore, he was a dope cat too, you know. He was a dope engineer as well as a producer. You know, he had a group called Black by Demand. He was also signed to Tommy Boy back in the days, you know.
Wow. Wow, that was early in my career working in Studio 1212. Shout out to Tim Mckasty, Paul C's brother. I never got a chance to work with Paul C because he passed by the time I started using the studio. Studio 1212 was located in Jamaica, Queens, you know what I'm saying? It was one of the premier spots back in the days for like a lot of underground hip hop that was in the come up to like go in there and demo their stuff and record their stuff. Like Ultramagnetic MCs used to work out of there, Super Lover C, Casanova Rudd, did those classics like Do the James. I used to work in there. My man CJ Moore, that was in the group Black by Demand on Tommy Boy Records back in the day. Shout out to CJ, he's still around doing his beats and engineering and stuff like that. I basically started out going up in there, me and my man Dr. Butcher, shout out to Dr. Butcher, you know, DJ and producer for Coogee Rap. And experimenting, just learning how to put my joints together, starting from just 45s and records, you know what I mean, and learning how to use the SP12 and programming beats and chopping up samples and experimenting, learning how to put my ideas together and make them sound like something, you know what I'm saying? It was interesting because, you know, there's a lot of history to that studio because that's where Large Professor actually learned how to work a lot of his stuff. And he was a producer and inspired me to make beats, you know what I mean? I used to watch him work with like Eric B and Rakim and G-Rap early in his career, right before the Main Source jumped off. And I patted myself after the way he used to make his beats on the SP1200 and stuff like that.
We were working on Coogee Rap's Born and Dead or Live project, and Joe Fatal, I was at G-Rap's house, and Joe Fatal came over, and he had this young guy with him named Paul. And he wasn't a producer at the time. We just kind of met. He was very quiet. He didn't say much. And we kind of hung out, and then later on, he was like, hey, let's go see Rakim. So we drove out to Long Island to visit Rakim. He wasn't around, and we decided to come back to Queens. And Paul was like, hey, let's stop off to see my buddy Paul C. And I'm like, you know Paul C? He was like, yeah, do you know him? I was like, yeah, that's a good friend of mine. But I kind of left it at that. We went to Paul's house. And when Paul saw me, we hadn't seen each other for years. It was like a lot of love. And he was like, wow, I didn't realize you guys were close. So he was showing us the music. Him and Rakim had just met, and he was going to be working on Rakim's next album, the album after Follow the Leader, Let the Rhythm Hit Him. He was going to be working on that album, producing it. And unfortunately, he got gunned down before he could do so. But it was ironic, that night we met, he showed us all of the music that he was going to use for that particular album. And I wasn't into producing or record collecting, but Paul was, Large Professor was. And so he was absorbing everything that Paul C showed him. And Joe Fatal, after Paul was murdered, Joe Fatal told Rakim that I know someone who knows what he was going to use, and he can probably remake the beats for you. So that's when he introduced Large Professor to Eric B and Rakim, and he just immediately took him in the studio and just had him produce an album. And so that was Large's introduction to production. I mean, he didn't have a drum machine, he didn't have anything. He was using studio equipment and just going on raw talent. Just what he had just learned from Paul C showed him how to use the SP1200, and he was just getting busy from there.
Well, he hit me with a bunch of tracks besides the joints that came out. But on this album here, we got Run for Cover, we got the Untouchables. Eager to Listen was him and Large Professor. Set Him Straight, that's a whole side of the album right there. In the Ghetto. And it's funny, the No Omega joint, he gave me a tape of front and back. It was a cassette tape, man. James Brown and Bobby Berg, and he was like, yo, listen to this. You hear a couple songs you like, pick it out, boom, boom. But he passed away, so No Omega, I sampled it up. But, you know, it was a song that my man gave me, man. You know what I mean? So, you know, wow. And what was crazy, like when I said I didn't know what to expect, when I walked in the house, he was just like a regular cat, man. You know what I mean? He wasn't bopping. He ain't have on no Nikes. He ain't have one leg rolled up. He ain't have a cap on pulled down to the side. You know what I mean? He ain't have a fat chain on. But when I walked in the room and seen the wall of records, I was like, yo, this dude here know what he doing. And when he started playing records and then he started playing beats, I said, this cat is hip-hop. So, you know, it's a shame that he ain't here, man. And, you know, I got him right next to my father. You know, it's my father right here. You know, rest in peace. My pops passed away, and Paul C passed away around the same time. And, you know what I mean? Let you know how I feel about this dude. And I only knew him for a couple months. But, you know, the way he was and the way he loved hip-hop and the way he, you know, cherished music, and even, you know, the way he sampled and showed me how to use my SP1200. You know what I mean? It's like,
I do things, and you know, I still see this dude today, man. So big up, man. You know what I mean? And for all the cats out there checking this documentary, man, make sure you understand it's cats like this that was behind the scene that, you know, played a big part in hip hop. So make sure you understand what it is, because you can be that dude too, man. You ain't gotta be on stage, you ain't gotta be, you know, in videos. But if you love music, you know, play your part and do what you do.
All right.
Paul probably would become some sort of impresario, like a P. Diddy or something like that. Guy, you can easily see him, you know, just developing acts, and because he was always on the move. I mean, I think production was interesting to him, but he really, you have to remember, he shifted from being a player. He was a bassist, and he really worked hard at that, and then he worked hard at production. So there's no reason to think he wouldn't have moved on to, you know, other things. I don't think he would have been managing acts, but he'd been finding talent and working with it. And like I said, I saw him getting involved in film work too, and that's what I was trying to kind of edge him into, that, you know, combining, you know, these different disciplines and making them, you know, in some new language that, you know, he would have been instrumental in creating, no pun intended, instrumental. One of the last conversations I had was I was making my first short film, Boss of the Ballet, and I thought it'd be really cool if we combined some of his production techniques in film, because I was interested in doing unusual sound recording in narrative film, and we talked about it, and that was our last conversation. It was pretty, pretty fruitful, but of course nothing came of it. He was, again, producing a lot of material for hip-hop acts, and that was, we would kind of just, I guess, go in different directions, but we would have arrived and done some other stuff together, I think.
With regards to Paul C, it was interesting. After LL left the Extravagant 3, when he went and got his record deal and started I Need a Beat, me and Royal Rich remained a group. And Rich's brother, Professor KB, who's an exceptional keyboard player, had a band with Paul C. And Rich was really cool with Paul, and Paul said, hey, come by, why don't you, Drew, come by and record some songs. He had just started working at a studio in Jamaica, Queens called 1212. So at nighttime, after a lot of the sessions were over, he would have this free time. And so me and Rich would meet him at the studio like about 12 o'clock midnight. We had these 14-year-old kids going up in the studio to hang out with Paul C. And he would have beats ready. I mean, he was working with Mikey D and Johnny Quest and Ultramagnetic and all these other artists. Steezo, he had all these guys in there that he was working with. Super Lover C, Casanova Run. So when those sessions were over, we would come in and do our recording. And we just became really close. I mean, Paul, again, he was like a big brother as well. I mean, he was always there. Anything we needed, he would just give to us, and he was incredible on the beats. It was just a very unfortunate situation that he was gunned down so early in his career, because had he not been, I believe Paul would have probably been at the top of the game as maybe the Dr. Dre of the East Coast, because he was just that committed to beats and digging. I mean, he was one of the first guys who was really digging for records that to this day no one still has. I mean, he was just ahead of everybody, so it's a loss, you know, a loss, but, you know, hopefully we all gained and moved on and learned things, and we bettered our own careers for that, so love him for that.
Yeah, that was a tough time for me, for everybody in the world, but I remember his cousin, Jim, I was cutting hair at a barber shop. Jim came in the shop, and he was like, Brandon, what's up? And I was like, hey, Jim, what's going on? And he said, I got some bad news. And I was like, okay, you have some bad news, what is it? So he says, Paul was murdered yesterday. And I said, Paul who? Paul C? Yeah, my cousin, Paul. And I just, it's like the whole world stopped. It's like time stopped at that moment. I'm like, wait a minute, I just saw Paul. What are you talking about? What happened? He was murdered in his house. And I was like, okay, are you serious? And it just was like, it didn't just like straight out the gate, Paul was murdered. So, you know, and I'm like, it wasn't like I heard it as the night of rumor. I heard it from a good source, which is his cousin, and I was like, you're kidding me. And, you know, it was terrible moment. Everybody, you know. Like I said in the last session, he just got signed to a major, and it was like, okay, he came and he said, Ray, I just got signed, and, you know, they offered me a heap of money, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, yo, Paul, that's great, you know. And I'm going to put everybody on, you, Mikey D, Johnny Quest, Dr. Rigo, Rozelle, you know, everybody. TNT, I was on TNT, Cartel Brothers, the junior from TNT, Cartel Brothers. And, you know, just everybody, I'm going to put them on. I'm going to put them on, and, you know, we're going to be, you know, big hits, and it's going to be one big success story. And I was like, cool. And then, shortly after he's, you know, just signed, literally just signed.
I was shocked because we had did a show that night. It was the Next Plateau party. You know, it was a Next Plateau party. We had performed, Sybil performed, you know, Don't Make Me Over. She had performed, and he was supposed to have came that night, and he didn't show up. You know, we were there with RSO. We was all there. We was waiting for him. You know, the Made Men. We was all at the party waiting for him, and he never got there. And that night, they went out there and discovered that he was, you know,
shot in the head or something. What kind of shit is that? Who shoot boy and shit?
It just wasn't right, you know what I mean? And I can't even explain it, you know, because he never had beef with anybody. He wasn't that type of person, you know what I mean? He didn't have a mad bone in his body. So when that happened, it was a shock to all of us, you know? So I couldn't believe it, you know?
The day he got murdered was a blow, pure blow. I came in the studio. I had, what session was it? Might have been Phase and Rhythm. Might have been them. I don't know. Might have been them. But I came in the studio, I rang the buzzer, and I had my key. Mick answered the door. Bloodshot, cherry red face. What the hell happened, Mick? And he looked at me, he's like, you didn't hear? So what happened? I'm thinking, you know, they stole equipment upstairs or something. He said, you didn't hear? He said, it's Paul. He broke down. I'm like, so what, Paul can't make it with you're not coming in today? I said, because I can't stay double today. He said, no, you're not listening, CJ. I said, you didn't say nothing. He said, Paul's dead. I just fell on the floor. I said, no, he's not. I just talked to Paul yesterday. Paul is dead. Huh? Me and him hugged for maybe 2 hours straight. No bullshit. Just stood there, couldn't understand, first of all, what would happen? He explained it to me. He said somebody shot him in his head in his sleep. You're kidding me. I said, who did it? He said, we don't know. And we just fell back. And my life was ruined. I said, nah, they didn't just take my partner away like that. They didn't take him away like that. It's impossible. So when I realized what had really taken place was the hip-hop community lost a future icon, they lost a leader, they lost an example, they lost a man who was going to input some of the baddest shit that would have ever been heard on this planet, because he was that serious. He was that serious. And nobody could ever feel it like I felt it, because I day in and day out it with that cat all the time. There was times that me and him feuded where egos may have flared up to where I was doing work, he doing work, and I ain't fucking with you, Paul. I ain't fucking with you, CJ. And he would do his clients, I would do my clients, come in and out. We wouldn't talk for 2 weeks at most. And then we like, what's wrong with us? You crazy? Who's gonna do what we do? We gotta knock this world down. And they took that from me. That was the dude. That was the dude. And it would have been so much solidified to this day if that man would still be on this planet. Because they ruined a lot of hip hop by taking him out. Because he would have added something that cats couldn't have added. Not in just talent, in character. His character was phenomenal. When Harmon Fly didn't have an enemy on the planet. You know, he stood for equality in general. Here he is of a Caucasian descent, marrying a black woman, a beautiful black woman at that. And he showed that race mixing wasn't a problem, which was very much a problem in the ready, steady world that we lived in New York City. That was like, look at them, what's wrong with them? He held his head up. The wife held her head up. And he stood strong. You know what I'm saying? So it was cool. He made it okay. And he gave people a reason, like, it's not bad. Good-looking guy, good-looking woman, talented guy, talented woman. She was into business. And they don't understand how much they took. And God help who did this, because we still don't know. To this day. Detectives have looked and looked and looked and searched. They've questioned and questioned, came up blank. So they eventually forgot about it. The only ones who remember that are his true people. We gotta live with that till the day we die. You know, I still pull out discs that me and him did. Got his handwriting and my handwriting. I still pull out pictures of myself. I won't let anybody see them because they sacred pictures. But on the same token, that's what holds me tight to that cat, because we help mold each other. We help put each other together. He helped me, I helped him. I gave him what he didn't have, he gave me what I didn't have. We're 2 pieces apart, and we were gonna run this planet. It's in our mind, that was in our mind, we were gonna run this planet. Hip hop is ours. And at that time, people were scared to do what we were doing in music. We were taking ordinary tracks and making them into stuff that they weren't from the beginning. And I don't care what anybody says. I don't care what any of these characters say. I created and I did this, that, and the third. We had proof in the pudding. We did it. What was snatched from a lot of Paul and myself's work was credit. You know, but the artists knew. When they come and they see us, they pay the homage. And to this day, I collect both of our homage because of the stuff that we did in 1212. That's why that place is so legendary in my mind. And I'm determined one day to let the world understand that what they don't know about. What they're gonna find out in the future is something that they need to study. If they want to get back to some of that essence, they need to listen to some of the things that we're saying. That way they can go from point A to point B and not miss a step, because we covered every ground, every basis of whatever it was. And that man was the epitome of that, strictly the epitome of that. And you know, every day I think about it, it's just amazing to me what was lost.
The police even questioned me because, coincidentally, Sleeping Bag Records told me, well, me and Johnny Quest went down to Sleeping Bag Records to see if we could get an advance or whatever. They denied us our advance because they said, Paul C said, we owe 1212 $16,000 on recording. Now, I knew that was a bunch of bullcrap coming from Sleeping Bag because Paul C let us do the studio time for free. But, you know, little slip of the tongue out of anger, I said, oh, Paul said that? Paul said that? I'm gonna kill him. Out of anger. And maybe 2 weeks later, they found him dead. You know what I mean? It was fucked up.
We would always meet up on a Sunday, like every other Sunday within the month. Like one Sunday out of the month, and we'll go beach shopping together. So we used to do that. We'd go ride around the city with his little car and shit. and we'll go beat shopping. So that was like our little daily routine once in a while. And then other than that, I used to kick it in his house. With, me, him, his wifey, and everything. We used to chill, cook spaghetti, talk about some stuff and things like that, nature, regular life things, and just talk about music and what we was trying to do and what we was trying to obtain. Because I know he was busy with us. He was busy with Eric B and Rakim also, dealing with their album, Let the Rhythm Hit 'Em album. And then untimely situation happened with some situation. He finished the record with Soup and Rud. And then that single was supposed to come out with Electra or whatever. It came out and it did what it had to do, but there was something else going on within them that was kind of internal, which I don't really know about, but I didn't really entertain. So it was a simple factor of I'm just trying to get to Paul to let him know that we need to finish what we need to take care of because we had some previous work that we were working on and we didn't complete it. So we wanted to finish that particular project that we were on. So when I was trying to contact him about that project, that's when I was finding out about his untimely death and his passing. So that's what really got me, really befuddled me because it made me feel like I just talked to him and it's like I couldn't see him no more. So that really just it left a real blank piece of me that was gone for a minute. I had to really deal with that for a little while, but I got used to understanding what happened. I talked to the detectives and all that other stuff. They told me what was going on with the case and all that things like that in that nature. But once I talked to Tim, his brother, and the family and everybody else, it was cool. So we have a proper understanding that everything was all right. So it's no problem.
I was in the Navy. I was just getting out of the Navy. It was 90, like the spring of 90. And my sister had talked to my sister, and she heard the news, and she told me about it. So earlier in last year, the year before, is when all that happened. And I just couldn't believe it, man. Like everybody else was shocked, This is a kid that everybody liked, And I knew him before he was a hip hop producer. And, being in school and everybody, he had no enemies. I mean, everybody was cool with him, So yeah, it was just a big shock, and it was a big shame,
When Paul got killed, it really hit me hard. It really pissed me off to the point of anger that I never really felt before in my entire lifetime. I didn't know what to do with that anger. I didn't know how to get rid of it because I lost a friend, and at the same time, it felt like where we were going in our careers and all of that was ended, and I didn't have any, it was difficult to find an answer to why that would happen in the time, in the fashion that it did. And I just remember just having so much anger about the situation and hate and just really wanting to go out and fuck somebody up for no apparent reason, just being that mad. I didn't know what to do with the anger. I never experienced anything like that. Somebody getting murdered that was that close to me.
And when he passed away, Lost Professor and this other cat, Joe Fatal, they came out to Long Island to kind of let me know, man. And we sat there in disbelief for hours. And that's when I got to know him more than I knew him, because Lost Professor started explaining to me, about Paul C and a lot of things he did, and his MO from sampling and all that, man. I still got an SB 1200 in my house today. You can go to my house right now. It's an SB 1200 in there, because that's what he taught me on. And that machine is classic within itself, but it's like letting my man know I'm still focused. I got the SB 12 in the crib. And to me, that's like a James Brown record. You play a James Brown record, boom, boom, you cut on the SB 1200, it's the same feeling. So, big up, man.
I fell back in production a long time. I did spurt tracks after he passed. Before then, every day in the studio. Every moment that passed, I was coming up with something. Every moment I got phone calls and I answered the phone calls. Every moment. I still got the phone calls. I didn't answer it. I didn't want it. I didn't want the Rakim project. Project fell in my lap. I didn't want it. Lost Professor was next in line. You take it. I don't want it. Biz Project, I don't want it. Because we worked on that together. Don't matter to me. I don't give a shit about the money. I'm gonna make money regardless. And it was just the essence of I was angry. You know? Let me just keep moving. I'll eventually grow back, and that's what I did. I started growing back. After a while, I stepped away. There was a lot of years that nobody heard from me, and I came back in it, but I've always had that bottled up anxiety of music inside me. And now the public is starting to see what was bottled up 15 years ago. And that's my new determination, to where it's carrying me. I'm not doing anything different than I did back in 87, 88, 89, when I was a kid. I'm still a kid at heart, but I'm a grown man in this music business. And now understanding where it came from, where it has evolved to, and where it is right now, I'm gonna take it 360. And if I gotta do it single-handedly, I will. And that's really the key here. And I'm holding this man in my heart to basically understand that he was a prevalent part of what I'm doing now. And that's real. That's as real as it could ever get, because I lived it. I'm not talking from the outside. I'm not talking from someone told me or I was around it. I was it. I was in it with him, you know, and I saw the work that came on his table and my table, and conclusively together, and it was monstrous.
Stand by, all right?
Yeah.
This is the last thing, and I'll tell you when. All right, lay it on us.
Here's a funny thing, yeah. Paul didn't have a middle name. His name was Paul Mckasty, and he was a big Ray Charles fan, so he decided to call himself Paul Charles Mckasty after Ray Charles, and he went from Paul Charles to Paul C, and that became his ultimate name, moniker. He didn't have a middle name, ironically, but he certainly made use of the C.
It's a good story.
Now, he looked like a rocker. And he used to wear like the jeans, you know, like the patches with the maybe like the tongue from Rolling Stones.
Oh, what?
Yeah, he was a rocker, you know. But he was funky though. Twisted. No. Look at his hair longer there.
Wow.
Then later on he would wear it shorter, right?
Wow.
You see?
Yeah, I saw that. Looked like he was like what?
Kid.
16, 15, 16?
You gotta see how. I'm gonna show you a picture of me. And now they said I look like the Karate Kid. And somebody jot down.
Yeah, what'd you do?
Somebody jot down there the greatest cartoonist in the world. But
wow.
That's not me today. Not the greatest cartoonist in the world.
Wow. Powerful, powerful.
Yeah.
We still here, we still around, we still getting it in, and we still keeping, you know, keeping the culture alive, you know what I'm saying, and the history alive. You know, as long as kids are still out here chopping up samples, you know, hey, Paul C is gonna live on in you know, in the hearts of all of us. And you know, I'm just glad that cats are keeping the legacy alive in the history, you know, of you know, Paul C's legacy alive pretty much.